I was halfway through a lukewarm beer and scrolling mindlessly through my phone when my entire world collapsed. Not with a bang, not with some dramatic confrontation, just with a stupid click on a video thumbnail that looked vaguely interesting. My name is David Mitchell, and I fix air conditioning units for a living. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills. At 38, I figured I'd seen enough of life's curveballs to handle whatever came my way. I was wrong. The video started innocently enough. Some amateur stuff, nothing too crazy. But then the camera panned, and I saw something that made my blood freeze. That lamp, that nightstand, that ugly floral wallpaper that Samantha insisted we keep because it was vintage chic. That was our bedroom. I paused the video, my thumb hovering over the screen like it might bite me. Maybe I was seeing things. Maybe all bedrooms looked the same in crappy lighting. But then the door opened, and there she was, my fiancée of 3 years, Samantha Pierce, walking into frame wearing nothing but a smile and leading some guy by the hand. Not me. Definitely not me. Well, I said to my empty living room, that's one way to spice up the relationship. The guy was tall, tan, and everything I wasn't. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, probably drove a car that cost more than my annual salary. I recognized him after a moment. Troy Brennan, who owned that flashy car dealership downtown. The one with the cheesy commercials where he pointed finger guns at the camera. I watched my fiancée laugh at something he said. Watched her pull him toward our bed, the bed where I'd been sleeping alone more nights than not lately, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, that would come later. This was something sharper, cleaner. This was rage with a purpose. I screenshotted everything, downloaded the video. Then I went looking for more. There were 3 others, all recent, all in our apartment. Different angles, different days, but the same 2 stars. Samantha had apparently been busy while I was out fixing broken AC units in 90-degree heat, earning money to pay for the wedding she'd been planning with obsessive detail for the past 6 months. The wedding that was exactly 2 weeks away. I closed the browser and sat back in my recliner, staring at the ceiling fan that wobbled slightly because I'd never gotten around to fixing it properly. Samantha always nagged me about that fan. Said it made the whole room look cheap. Funny how perspective changes things. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. I typed back. Love you too, sweetheart. Then I cracked another beer and started planning. The next morning, I woke up wondering if it had all been some kind of nightmare. Then I checked my phone and saw the downloaded videos, and reality came crashing back down. Samantha was already gone. She always left early for her job at Pierce Marketing Solutions. Yes, she worked for her own family's company. No, she never let me forget how lucky I was to be marrying into money. I called in sick to work and spent the day doing research. Amazing what you can find out about someone when you really put your mind to it. Troy Brennan, 32, divorced 6 months ago. His ex-wife got the house, he got the car lot, and a reputation for sleeping around. He had about 50,000 followers on Instagram, where he posted pictures of himself with expensive cars and made motivational posts about living your best life and taking what's yours. Real philosophical genius, this one. I drove by his dealership around lunchtime, just to get a look at the place. Brennan's luxury motors, all glass and chrome and cars that cost more than most people's houses. I watched him through the window, schmoozing with a young couple, flashing those perfect teeth. My phone rang. Samantha. Hey, baby, she said. And I could hear the fake sweetness dripping through the speaker. How are you feeling? Still sick? Much better, I said. Just needed some rest. Good. Listen, I'm going to be working late again tonight. Big client meeting. You understand, right? Through the dealership window, I watched Troy Brennan check his phone and grin. Of course, I told my fiancée. Work comes first. Always has with you. She either missed the edge in my voice or chose to ignore it. You're the best, David. This is why I love you. After she hung up, I sat in my truck for another hour, watching Troy work his magic on potential customers. The man was a natural salesman, I'd give him that. Smooth, confident, probably never had to worry about getting grease under his fingernails or crawling through attics in 100-degree heat. That evening, I installed a small camera in our bedroom. Nothing fancy, just a cheap nanny cam I picked up at an electronics store. If Samantha and her boy toy were going to keep using our place as their personal studio, I wanted better footage than some random pornography website could provide. I hid it behind a picture frame on the dresser, angled to catch the bed and most of the room. Then I went to Murphy's Bar and spent the night drinking with my buddy Ray Kowalski, who owned the boxing gym where I worked out 3 times a week. Ray was the kind of guy who looked like he could bench press a small car, but he had the instincts of a therapist. He took one look at me and knew something was wrong. "You look like someone ran over your dog," he said, sliding a beer across the bar. "What's eating you?" I almost told him everything right then. Ray was good people, the kind of friend who'd help you bury a body without asking questions. But I wasn't ready to share yet. The wound was too fresh, and I had plans to make. "Wedding stress," I said instead. "You know how it is?" Ray snorted. "No, I don't know how it is, and I plan to keep it that way. Marriage is just divorce with extra steps." Cheerful as always, Ray. "Well, hey, I'm just saying. You sure you want to go through with this? That fiancé of yours?" He trailed off, shaking his head. "What about her?" "Nothing. Forget I said anything." But I pressed him. "Come on, Ray. What about her?" He was quiet for a long moment, wiping down glasses that were already clean. Finally, he looked up at me. "She was in here last week, with some guy, wasn't you?" My grip tightened on my beer bottle. "What kind of with him?" "The kind where they were sitting real close, and she had her hand on his thigh." "Look, Dave, maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just, what did he look like?" Ray described Troy Brennan perfectly, right down to the expensive watch and the car salesman's smile. I finished my beer and headed home to an empty apartment. The camera I'd installed was already recording. Over the next week, I collected enough evidence to sink a battleship. The hidden camera caught 2 more sessions between Samantha and Troy, both on days when I was supposedly at work. I'd started leaving early and coming back to watch from my truck, just to see the full scope of their operation. They were bold, I'd give them that. Troy would park his flashy red Corvette right in our driveway, like he owned the place. They'd go inside, do their business, and he'd leave with a kiss that lasted longer than most of my conversations with Samantha these days. But the real gold mine was Samantha's phone. She'd always been careless with it, leaving it unlocked on the counter while she showered or got ready for work. It took me about 30 seconds to install a monitoring app that would send copies of all her texts to my email. What I found there was worse than the videos. Group chat with her best friend Jenna Walsh and 2 other women from her office, Samantha. "God, I can't wait for this wedding to be over. 2 more weeks of pretending to be excited about marrying a loser who smells like Freon." Jenna. "Why are you even going through with it? Just call it off." Samantha. "Are you kidding? Do you know how much money we've already spent? Plus, David's got that life insurance policy from his job. Marriage makes everything easier if something happens to him." Jenna. "Jesus, Sam, that's dark even for you." Samantha. "I'm just being practical. Besides, Troy says once we're married, we can probably get David to move out of the apartment for work reasons, and then we'd have the place to ourselves." "Speaking of Troy, how's that going?" "Amazing. He's everything David isn't. Successful, ambitious, knows how to treat a woman, plus the sex is incredible. David's idea of foreplay is asking if I'm ready." They went on like that for pages. My loving fiancé describing our sex life in excruciating detail, complaining about my job, my appearance, my complete lack of ambition. She even shared photos of engagement rings that Troy had been showing her, apparently planning to propose once she was done with me. The best part? They'd been planning this for months. Jenna had introduced them at some company party, knowing full well that Samantha was engaged. It was all a game to them. I printed everything. Screenshots, text logs, even the metadata from the photos. Then I started planning my response. The wedding was at St. Mary's Catholic Church, the big stone cathedral downtown where Samantha's family had been going for generations. 300 guests, open bar, reception at the country club. Her father was sparing no expense for his little princess. I'd met with Father Rodriguez, no relation to anyone in my story, the week before, to go over the ceremony details. Nice old man, been doing weddings for 40 years. He walked me through the whole process, including the part where he asks if anyone objects to the union. "It's just tradition," he'd said with a smile. "No one ever actually speaks up." "Right," I'd said, "just tradition." I spent that weekend setting up the technical side of my plan. The church had a modern sound system and a projector for displaying hymns and readings, very convenient for someone who knew his way around electronics. Samantha was getting more excited as the big day approached. spending hours on the phone with caterers and florists and photographers. She'd barely spoken to me in days, except to complain about some detail or another. David, did you pick up your tuxedo? Yes, sweetheart. And you're sure you know what you're supposed to do during the ceremony? Stand there and look grateful that you're marrying me? She actually smiled at that. Exactly. Try not to mess it up. Don't worry, I thought. I won't mess up a thing. 3 days before the wedding, I had lunch with my future father-in-law, Robert Pierce. He'd insisted on taking me to his country club, probably to remind me one last time about the social gap between his family and mine. Robert Pierce was everything you'd expect from old money. Silver hair, perfect posture, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about paying bills. He'd built Pierce Marketing from a small agency into a regional powerhouse, and he never let anyone forget it. David, he said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision, I want you to know how happy we are to have you joining the family. The lie came so smoothly I almost believed it myself. Almost. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Samantha is very special to us. She's our only daughter, and we've always wanted the best for her. I nodded and kept eating my sandwich, which probably cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a week. I've been thinking, Robert continued, about your future, your career prospects. Here it comes, I thought. Air conditioning repair is honest work, but it's not exactly, well, it's not what we envisioned for Samantha's husband. I have some connections in the business world. Perhaps we could find you something more suitable. More suitable. Management training. Sales. Something with growth potential. Something that would allow you to provide for Samantha in the manner she deserves. I set down my sandwich and looked at him. Really looked at him. Mr. Pierce, are you offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity to better yourself, for Samantha's sake. The condescension was so thick, I could have cut it with a knife. This man genuinely believed he was doing me a favor by suggesting I abandon the career I'd built to become some kind of corporate puppet. That's very generous, I said. Can I think about it? Of course, but don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. After lunch, I drove straight to Ray's gym and beat the hell out of a heavy bag for an hour. Ray watched me work, not saying anything until I finally stopped, breathing hard and sweating through my shirt. Feel better? He asked. Getting there. You want to tell me what's really going on? And don't say wedding stress again. I've seen wedding stress. This is something else. I looked around the gym. It was empty except for us, just the way I liked it. Ray had been my friend for 10 years, ever since I'd started coming here to blow off steam after my divorce from my first wife. He'd never judged me, never tried to fix my problems unless I asked. If I tell you something, I said, can you keep it to yourself for a few more days? You know I can, so I told him. Everything. The videos, the texts, the conversations with her family, the whole elaborate charade that my life had become. Ray listened without interrupting, his expression getting darker with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Jesus, Dave, that's really messed up. Yeah, what are you going to do? I told him about my plan. Ray's eyes got wide. Are you sure about this? I mean, really sure? Because once you pull that trigger, there's no going back. I'm sure. It's going to get ugly, really ugly. It's already ugly, Ray. I'm just going to make sure everyone else can see it too. He nodded slowly. You need any help? Just be there on Saturday. Front row if you can manage it. Wouldn't miss it for the world. That evening, I had dinner with Samantha at her favorite restaurant. She was practically glowing with excitement, talking nonstop about the ceremony, the reception, the honeymoon we had planned in Hawaii. I can't believe it's finally happening, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. After all this time, we're actually going to be married. Hard to believe, I agreed. Are you nervous? A little. It's a big step. The biggest, she said. But I know we're going to be so happy together, David. I can just feel it. I squeezed her hand back and smiled. I think Saturday is going to be a day nobody forgets. She laughed. You're such a romantic. That's one of the things I love about you. After dinner, we went back to the apartment. Samantha went straight to the bathroom to start her nightly beauty routine, leaving me alone in the living room with my thoughts and my laptop. I opened the folder containing all the evidence I'd collected. Videos, screenshots, text logs, photos. Enough material to destroy her reputation and Troy's business in one spectacular public display. Tomorrow was the rehearsal. Saturday was the wedding. I was ready. Friday evening. St. Mary's Cathedral was buzzing with nervous energy as both families gathered for the wedding rehearsal. Samantha's side filled up most of the church, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, all dressed like they were attending a society event rather than a simple run-through. My side was smaller. My parents, my brother Mike with his wife and kids, Ray, and a handful of friends from work. We looked like exactly what we were, working-class people trying to fit into a world that barely tolerated us. Father Rodriguez walked us through the ceremony step by step. Where to stand, when to speak, how to handle the rings. It was all very civilized and traditional. Now, this is the part where I ask if anyone has objections to the union, he explained to the gathered crowd. It's largely ceremonial these days, but it's still part of the traditional service. Samantha's mother, Patricia Pierce, laughed. Well, I certainly hope no one objects. We've spent enough money on this wedding to buy a small country. Everyone chuckled politely. I smiled and nodded along with the rest of them. After the rehearsal, we all went to the country club for dinner. I found myself seated between Samantha's cousin Jennifer and her brother-in-law Mark, both of whom seemed determined to make small talk about my quaint profession. Air conditioning repair, Jennifer said, like she was trying to understand a foreign language. That must be interesting. It has its moments, I said. Do you work on cars too, or just buildings? Mostly commercial and residential HVAC systems, some refrigeration. She nodded like I'd just explained quantum physics. And you enjoy it? It pays the bills. Mark leaned over. Robert mentioned he might have some opportunities for you in the business world. That's exciting. Very exciting, I agreed. Across the table, Samantha was deep in conversation with Jenna Walsh, her maid of honor and partner in betrayal. They kept glancing at me and giggling like schoolgirls sharing secrets. Which, I suppose, they were. Jenna caught my eye and raised her wine glass. To David, she said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. Welcome to the family. Everyone drank to that. Even me. After dinner, there were more toasts, more speeches about love and commitment and the sanctity of marriage. Robert Pierce stood up and talked about how proud he was of his daughter, how she'd grown into such a beautiful and accomplished woman. And David, he said, turning to me, we're so pleased that Samantha chose someone who clearly adores her. Anyone can see how much you love my daughter. More than she knows, I said, and everyone laughed and applauded. The evening wound down around 10 o'clock. Samantha and I drove home in comfortable silence, her hand resting on my leg as I navigated the familiar streets. That went well, she said as we pulled into our driveway. Very well. Are you ready for tomorrow? I looked at her in the dim light from the dashboard. Even after everything I knew about her, she was still beautiful. Still the woman I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago, before I understood what she really was. I've been ready for weeks, I told her. She squeezed my leg. I love you, David Mitchell. I love you too, Samantha Pierce. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did love her. Or at least I loved the woman I thought she was, the woman she'd pretended to be for 3 years while planning to use me and discard me like a broken appliance. That night, after she fell asleep, I made my final preparations. I copied all the evidence files to a USB drive and tested the laptop connection to the church's projection system one more time. Everything was ready. I set my alarm for 7 a.m. and lay down next to my fiancée for the last time, listening to her breathe in the darkness and thinking about how different our lives were going to be in 24 hours. And she had no idea what was coming, but she would. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect spring day that makes you believe in new beginnings and happy endings. The irony wasn't lost on me. I woke up before my alarm and found Samantha already gone. She'd left a note on the bathroom mirror. Gone to get ready with the girls. See you at the altar. Love, your almost wife. Your almost wife. If she only knew how accurate that was going to be. I showered, shaved, and put on my tuxedo with the care of a soldier preparing for battle. Every detail had to be perfect. This was going to be the performance of my lifetime, and I couldn't afford any mistakes. At 10 a.m., my brother Mike picked me up to drive to the church. He was serving as my best man, a role that mostly involved making sure I didn't lose the rings and providing moral support. You nervous? He asked as we pulled out of the driveway. A little. That's normal. I was a wreck before my wedding. Threw up twice. Did you ever have second thoughts? Mike glanced at me. Every groom has second thoughts, Dave. It's natural. But when you see her walking down that aisle, all the doubts disappear. Trust me. I nodded and stared out the window at the passing scenery. Mike had no idea how right he was going to be. We arrived at St. Mary's at 11, an hour before the ceremony was scheduled to start. The church was already bustling with activity. Florists making final adjustments to the arrangements, the photographer setting up equipment, guests beginning to arrive and find their seats. I slipped into the small room behind the altar where I'd hidden my laptop the night before. It was still there, exactly where I'd left it, connected to the church's sound and projection systems through cables I'd carefully concealed behind decorative panels. Father Rodriguez found me there 20 minutes later, looking calm and paternal in his ceremonial robes. "How are you holding up, son?" "Good, Father. Ready to get married. Any last-minute jitters?" "Nothing I can't handle." He smiled and patted my shoulder. "That's what I like to hear. Your bride is a lovely woman, David. You're a lucky man." "The luckiest," I agreed. By 11:30, the church was packed. 300 guests filled every pew, a sea of expensive clothes and expectant faces. I recognized most of Samantha's family and friends, but there were plenty of strangers too. Business associates, society friends, people who probably couldn't pick me out of a lineup, but wouldn't miss the social event of the season. I took my place at the altar next to Mike, my hands folded, my expression calm. In the front row, my parents smiled at me with pride and love. Behind them, Ray gave me a subtle thumbs up. On the other side of the aisle, the Pierce family looked like they were attending a royal wedding. Robert Pierce checked his watch impatiently, while Patricia fussed with her hat. Various relatives and friends chatted quietly among themselves, all of them radiating the kind of self-satisfaction that comes from being part of the right crowd. The organist began playing, and the wedding party started their procession down the aisle. First came the bridesmaids in their pale blue dresses, walking in measured steps and smiling at the crowd. Jenna Walsh was among them, looking beautiful and completely oblivious to what was about to happen. Then the music changed to the traditional wedding march, and everyone stood. Samantha appeared at the back of the church on her father's arm, and I had to admit she looked stunning. Her dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace that probably cost more than my truck, and she wore it like she was born to be a bride. Her smile was radiant as she began her walk down the aisle, nodding to friends and family like a queen, acknowledging her subjects. She looked happy. Genuinely, completely happy. I almost felt sorry for what I was about to do. Almost. Samantha reached the altar, and her father lifted her veil to kiss her cheek before placing her hand in mine. Her fingers were trembling slightly. Nerves or excitement, I couldn't tell which. "You look beautiful," I whispered, and meant it. "So do you," she whispered back. "I can't believe we're actually doing this." "Neither can I." Father Rodriguez began the ceremony with the traditional opening words about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of the commitment we were about to make. His voice echoed through the cathedral as 300 people listened in respectful silence. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," he intoned, "but reverently, discreetly, advisedly, and in the fear of God." I squeezed Samantha's hands and smiled at her. She smiled back, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. The ceremony proceeded through the familiar rituals, readings from scripture, a brief homily about love and commitment, the exchange of vows we'd written ourselves. Samantha went first, speaking about how I'd changed her life and made her believe in true love again. "David," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the church, "you are my anchor, my safe harbor, my best friend and greatest love. I promise to stand by you through good times and bad, to support your dreams and share your burdens, to love you faithfully for all the days of my life." There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even I felt a stab of something. Regret, maybe, or mourning for what we might have had if she'd been the woman she was pretending to be. Then it was my turn. "Samantha," I said, looking directly into her eyes. 3 years ago, you came into my life and changed everything. You showed me possibilities I'd never imagined, introduced me to a world I'd never known, and taught me things about myself I'd never understood." She was crying now, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. "You've been my teacher, my guide, and my inspiration. Today, I want to show you and everyone here just how much you mean to me, and how well you've taught me to see the world as it really is." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Robert Pierce nodded with satisfaction. Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Father Rodriguez smiled and continued with the ceremony. "The rings, please." Mike handed me Samantha's ring, a diamond solitaire that had cost me 3 months' salary. I slipped it onto her finger as I repeated the words Father Rodriguez spoke. With this ring, I thee wed. Samantha's hands were shaking as she put my ring on my finger, a simple gold band that matched the one she was wearing. With this ring, I thee wed. Father Rodriguez raised his hands. If there is anyone present who knows of any lawful impediment why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The church fell silent. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, planning for, dreaming about for 2 weeks. I cleared my throat. Actually, Father, I have something to say. The silence in the church was absolute. 300 people held their breath as Father Rodriguez looked at me with confusion and growing concern. David? Samantha whispered. What are you doing? I stepped back from her and addressed the crowd, my voice carrying clearly through the cathedral's sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, thank you all for being here today to witness what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Robert Pierce half rose from his seat, his face darkening with anger and embarrassment. I'm sorry to interrupt the ceremony, I continued, but I recently discovered some information that I think you all should see before we proceed. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small remote control, the one I'd connected to my hidden laptop the night before. Samantha, honey, do you remember that weekend 2 months ago when I went to Chicago for that HVAC convention? Her face had gone white. David, what are you? The weekend you said you were going to stay home and work on wedding planning? I clicked the remote. The church's projection screen, normally used for displaying hymns and readings, flickered to life behind the altar. The first image that appeared was a screenshot from one of the videos I'd found. Samantha and Troy Brennan in our bedroom, her hands on his chest, both of them laughing at something he'd said. The gasps from the crowd were audible. Someone screamed. Patricia Pierce fainted dead away, crashing into the pew in front of her. David, stop! Samantha lunged for the remote, but I stepped back. I don't think so, sweetheart. These people came here to see a wedding. The least we can do is show them what they're really celebrating. I clicked to the next image, then the next, each one more damning than the last, showing my fiancée in various states of undress with her lover in our shared home. The church erupted into chaos. People were shouting, standing up, pointing at the screen. Robert Pierce was on his feet, his face purple with rage. Turn that off, he roared. Turn it off right now. But we're just getting started, I said, and clicked to a screenshot of the text messages. Samantha's words appeared on the screen in stark black and white. God, I can't wait for this wedding to be over. 2 more weeks of pretending to be excited about marrying a loser who smells like Freon. The crowd read in stunned silence. Then I clicked to the next message. David's got that life insurance policy from his job. Marriage makes everything easier if something happens to him. That's when the real pandemonium began. Samantha was sobbing now, her carefully applied makeup streaming down her face in black rivers. Please, David, please stop. I can explain. Explain what? I turned to face her, and for the first time in weeks, I let my real feelings show. Explain how you've been screwing another man in our bed? Explain how you were planning to get rid of me after the wedding? Explain how you and your friends have been laughing at me behind my back for months? I clicked to another text exchange, this one showing her sharing intimate details about our sex life with Jenna and her other bridesmaids. Jenna Walsh, standing frozen in her bridesmaid dress, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Or maybe, I continued, you'd like to explain this? The final image was a photo Troy had sent to Samantha, a picture of an engagement ring with the message, "Can't wait to give this to you once you dump the loser." The church had gone from chaos to a kind of stunned silence. 300 people stared at the screen, then at Samantha, then at me. Father Rodriguez found his voice first. David, I think perhaps we should postpone the ceremony. I laughed, and the sound echoed through the cathedral like a gunshot. Oh, Father, I think the ceremony is over. In fact, I'd say it went exactly as planned. I turned to Samantha one last time. She was on her knees now, her beautiful dress spread around her like a pool of silk and shame. You wanted to marry up, sweetheart. You wanted someone successful, someone ambitious, someone who knew how to treat a woman. Well, congratulations. You just got a masterclass in all 3. I handed the remote to my brother Mike, who was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. The laptop's behind the altar, I told him. Make sure everyone gets a good look at everything, especially the video files. Then I walked down the aisle, past the shocked faces and open mouths. past my parents who looked like they didn't know whether to be proud or horrified, past Ray who was grinning like Christmas morning. At the back of the church, I paused and turned around one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, "thank you for coming. I'm sorry the wedding didn't work out, but I hope you'll agree that the truth was worth sharing. Please, enjoy the reception. It's already paid for." And then I walked out of St. Mary's Cathedral a free man. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a motel on the other side of town and turned off my phone. I needed time to think, to process what I'd just done, to figure out what came next. But the world wasn't going to wait for me to collect myself. By Sunday morning, my phone had 247 missed calls and over 500 text messages. The story had exploded across social media. Someone in the church had been recording on their phone when I started my presentation, and the video was already going viral. I was famous. Samantha was infamous. I finally turned my phone back on around noon and started going through the messages. Most were from reporters wanting interviews. Some were from friends and family checking to see if I was okay. A few were from strangers congratulating me on showing that cheating which what for. But the most interesting ones were from people who knew Samantha and Troy. Ray had sent me a link to Troy's Instagram account, which had been flooded with comments calling him a homewrecker and a scumbag. His car dealership's Facebook page was getting review bombed by people who'd seen the wedding video. My brother Mike had forwarded me an email from someone at Pierce Marketing Solutions. Apparently, Samantha had been put on administrative leave pending an investigation into her conduct. The company couldn't afford to have their reputation associated with the scandal. But the best message came from Troy's ex-wife, a woman named Lisa Brennan, who'd found my phone number through some mutual acquaintances. "David," her text read, "I just wanted to thank you for exposing what kind of man my ex-husband really is. I suspected he was cheating during our marriage, but I could never prove it. What you did took courage. If you ever want to compare notes about what it's like being betrayed by people you trusted, give me a call." I called her that afternoon. Lisa Brennan turned out to be a smart, funny woman who'd been married to Troy for 8 years before catching him with his secretary. She'd gotten a good divorce settlement, but the emotional damage had taken longer to heal. "I saw the video," she said. "I have to admit, part of me was cheering. Troy always thought he was so clever, so smooth. It's nice to see him get his comeuppance. How's he handling it?" "Not well. He called me yesterday, crying and begging me to make some kind of public statement defending his character. I told him I'd rather endorse a serial killer. We talked for an hour, and by